And we're officially live. Good morning and welcome to another episode of Money Matters, broadcasting live only on onedealaway.com/live. My name is Nev, and today is Thursday, August what? August 6th? Is that what it is? It is August 6th. And of course, because it is Thursday, we are doing real estate special. Every Thursday, we go in and we discover what news exists out there when it comes to real estate. Now, real estate is a bit slower moving vehicle to make money and preserve your money than some of the other vehicles that might exist out there, but it is an incredibly important one that we should be paying attention to. So we don't get necessarily as big of a swings of like, yeah, we were up yesterday, we're down to today, tomorrow we're going to be back up. It doesn't happen necessarily that fast, but it does move, and we do get information typically with the lag. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about two different perspectives when it comes to investing in real estate. And that is, on one side, we're getting some information and news that everything is doom and gloom of what's coming our way. And then we're also getting perspectives that is saying everything that is coming is actually probably the best thing that could have happened for those that are looking to get into real estate or stay or even expand inside real estate. So we're going to be discussing all of those things, covering what is happening right now today, but then also taking a bit of a peek into what a future might look like, because inability to kind of prepare ourselves for the future means that perhaps we're not as ready as we can be to sort of look at, well, wait a minute, if this is what's happening today and there's a potential that this could happen tomorrow, how do I position myself today to benefit tomorrow? And that is what we're going to be discussing today. I hope that you're very excited. I am welcoming everybody watching this live on onedealaway.com. And if you're watching this on YouTube, do me a favor, smash that like button right now. Do subscribe, get the bell button. That way you get notified every single day when a show pops up. And that is, well, every single day. Let's do this. And good morning and welcome. So let's get started to really learn of what's going on actually in real estate right now. And of course, we're going to start with the mortgage rates. Now, if you've been paying attention over the past few days or weeks, you will realize that there is the largest mortgage originator out there, UWM, that has just dropped their 15-year fixed mortgage to below 2%. I believe a report was 1.875 as a product, which is beyond exciting and amazing. And of course, we do want to get into a fixed state right now, even though that the rates are dropping at the moment, but they're not going to be dropping for forever. They're probably going to stay a bit lower for a bit longer than most people are expecting. But where we are right now, what I am expecting to see is that these are going to shift, and when they shift, they're going to shift on up. So I don't necessarily recommend going into an adjustable rate mortgage, but again, to each their own. This is not a financial advice by no means. It's just one guy's opinion of what's going on. And I will explain to you later on in this episode, in this show, as to why we would want to stick with a fixed rate as opposed to the adjustable rate. The other piece that I would also put out there for folks, especially if they're brand new in the investing world inside real estate or even just buying real estate, my recommendation is to go with the 30-year. Now, I have already done a couple of videos explaining more in depth and detail as to why fixed and why 30 versus 15 year, and you can find that on the YouTube channel. I believe that episode, you'll probably find it sometimes April, maybe May of this year. Probably, I would say probably April, because I remember it was a walk and talk episode, and it was a bit chillier. So I don't remember it being that chilly in May. We got hit with the summer early on, and it's still very, very hot summer nonetheless. So you definitely want to do 30. Just a short explanation is because you want to give yourself more bandwidth, more room, and there's nothing prohibiting you for paying it on a 15-year mortgage payment schedule to if you want to pay it off faster. But again, there's some strategies that I teach inside One Deal Away and One Deal Away Academy that make sense why you wouldn't even want to do that. And a lot of it has to do with what I will be sharing with you in the upcoming minutes as the episode progresses. All right, so let's take a look at what today's mortgage rates, and of course, we're talking averages here, right? And right now, they're basically sharing that the 30-year fixed mortgage is 3.09% in a decrease of 5 basis points over last week. And if you remember, about a month ago or so, we were at 3.25%. So it means that you are actually paying less for the same priced home when you borrow money. 15-year mortgage is 2.72, down 3.3 basis points over the last week. And the ARM is 3.29%, adding 1 basis point over the last 7 days. This is an interesting one, and here you go. You can see right here of sort of what the change was, what the last week was, what this week is, and what the change has been. And you will see that between 30-year regular and 15-year, 30-year jumbo and jumbo refinance, everything is down slightly. Not a huge down, but a down nonetheless. And again, it's very interesting that right now you can still, if you take a look at the 30-year fixed, you can get it for 3.09%, not 3.9, 3.09. But if you take an ARM adjustable rate, it's 3.29. Again, it makes no sense whatsoever why you should be even considering adjustable rate mortgage. As I have said, when the rates are super, super low, adjustable rate has only one direction to go more often than not. So why risk it? Get yourself into a locked rate. That way you also know what your mortgage is going to be. Now, of course, taxes and insurance and that stuff, that is going to vary. And there's nothing you can do about that one. But at least your mortgage is sort of set. And again, we're going to be talking about why this is important on the long term. So we have a couple of articles that are sort of more on the gloom and doom side of things. And here is a first one. Basically says, as rent moratorium expires, landlord-tenant battles begin. The eviction moratorium expired, of course, a couple of weeks ago, and we've already talked about it, and the fact that folks have been filing already. 33% of renters have yet to make their full payment in July, which makes it about 12 million renters that could be on the cusp of eviction in a matter of months. Landlords are set to lose billions of dollars this year over inability of tenants to pay rent thanks to the virus-induced recession. Landlords are now demanding back rent in August payment. And of course, this is normal of what happens, that when somebody doesn't pay the rent and now they're starting to pay to avoid the eviction, they actually have to catch up and of course remain current in order for that eviction to not happen. Now, what the article over here is talking about is that there's some disputes that are starting to happen and fights between landlords and tenants. And of course, I guess this was happening in Georgia, and now the SWAT team had to come in. I mean, look at the amount of cars that showed up. Crazy. Washington's inability to deliver the next round of Trump checks to the working poor ahead of August, as we've noticed, a fiscal cliff was just ahead, has likely resulted in millions of folks skipping out on rent payments in August. Tens of millions of Americans were pushed into instant poverty by the economic downturn, and many face housing insecurity and homelessness as the labor market recovery reserves, which has led to millions of permanent job losses. Confrontations between landlords and tenants on the subject of payment are set to rise. And of course, there are all kinds of I wouldn't call them riots, but they're definitely protests. As you can see, you might have seen that in your area and your neighborhood, as individuals are sort of saying, I don't think so. This is not happening. You're not evicting me. Now, part of the piece over here that we do is not just deliver news, but also deliver education with these news. And so, if you are a property owner, you could, of course, go and fight if you want. I don't recommend it. I recommend following the rule of the law, following everything that you're set to do. If you need assistance, I do recommend that you work with a reputable attorney and then follow their guidance on what should be happening and how to follow the laws within your state. You definitely want to get a local attorney, okay? Because they will know the laws, they will know and understand the eviction process in the state. And when I say local attorney, if you own property, say you live in Texas, but you own property in Oklahoma, you want to get Oklahoma attorney, not Texas attorney. So it's going to be local to the property, not local to you in case you're vesting out of state. We do recommend, or I do recommend, that you attempt to work a deal with your tenant and, of course, being nice. Now, do I understand that, excuse me, if you're not getting paid, you obviously can't pay the mortgage and can't pay the bills, and so there's a problem on that side of the spectrum. But going out yelling, arguing, cursing, it's not going to do any good whatsoever. It's going to leave everybody upset. I do recommend having an understandable conversation, if you can. Of course, if that is not the case and the tenant is avoiding you and they're not talking to you, that's fine. Then you can just result then to following the process as instructed by your attorney. Oftentimes, that is going to involve sending a written documentation, written letters, tracking the stuff, submitting everything to the attorney, and then allowing that attorney to assist you with the process. I do recommend for folks to try to work things out, because here's part of the challenge, right? Is that as we evict a lot of folks out, of course, they become homeless and they don't have where to go. So that could be a lot of security risk, health risk for everybody involved. On the other side of the things, you also got to think about, who is going to come into that property, because if most people are needing a home and you evict many people, right? So many people lose. I mean, think about it globally, not just one for one exchange. Who is coming in into that property to rent it so that you can collect money. So if there's an ability to work out the deal and both tenant and landlord are willing to sit down calmly and have a conversation of what would make sense and kind of how do we play some of this catch up and how do we assist with some of this stuff, that is probably going to be a preferred method for you to do this. If you are a tenant, again, reaching out and working with your landlord, if you can, having a calm conversation. Again, that yelling, cursing, beating each other up, like that's ridiculous, y'all. It's not gonna solve the problem. The problem is that the tenant is potentially, right? I don't know, potentially cannot pay because they don't have money. They need a place to live. So what are some of the workable solutions? How do we end up making this happen? How do we help each other out when it comes to this stuff? And of course, if there's no workable solution, then we just follow the process. And for the tenants, you also have a right and ability to reach out to local attorneys, to legal aid, to be able to get some legal assistance when it comes to your rights and abilities and so on. The defense, again, based off of what I know about laws, I'm not an attorney. Want to put that out there. I don't play one on internet or anywhere else. But my understanding of the laws is that, saying I don't have a job, which is why I can't pay this, and home is my basic right, is not going to get the eviction court to stop. Now, laws could change. I fully acknowledge that piece. But based off of where we stand right now, that is not a defense. So whether it's fair, whether it's right, whether it's okay, I'm not going to argue that piece. You are entitled to feel however you want to feel about the whole thing. I'm just letting you know of what the current situation is and kind of where we stand. So my suggestion is for folks to attempt to kind of work things out. I know that the legal right says, collect all of the money right now, but that is very, very hard. I need landlords to kind of think a little bit to say, if you were being asked in your forbearance, which you might, to catch up fully for the past 3, 4, 5, 6 months and stay current on the current month, and your income hasn't been coming, that's going to be impossible. So let's think through putting ourselves into each other's shoes and then coming up with something that makes sense. Hey, can you make this month's rent plus maybe, a couple $100 from last month's rent, and let's come up with some sort of longer term solution of how we can catch you up, right? So if your rent is say $1,000 and you owe 4,000, can we catch you up over the upcoming months that you're going to be paying an additional? So instead of paying $1,000, maybe you're going to be paying $1,400 or $1,500 for a few months to catch you up, and then we're going to drop it right back down to the $1,000. That makes sense, right? Is there an ability to potentially, like, okay, it's not going to be 4,000, if you can help with certain things around the house or whatever, right? Like, let's come up with some sort of workable solution that makes sense to do that stuff. If you do some of that whole, like, hey, if you do some stuff around the property, around the house, we can reduce your rent by this much and that kind of stuff, please, again, reach out to your attorney to see what risk you might be exposing yourself to that kind of treatment, and then follow their advice to the best of your ability. Some sort of written contract as an addendum to the lease contract that you already have is probably going to be a very, very good idea. Whether it's work, whether it's reduced rent, whether it's increased rent to catch up, whatever it is, make sure you do have it in writing for everybody's protection. So now we're going to switch over to a different sort of news, and this one is a property manager's take on the coming eviction crisis. Cash Management, which manages more than 10,000 apartments in Chicagoland across the income scale. They do manage properties for landlords as well, and they only get paid when the income comes in, when rent comes in. A principal at Cash Management told me that the company's typical on-time collection rate has dropped by about 5 to 7%, which adds to about 1,500 households that are not paying. Some tenants are a month behind or paying reduced rate. Others are in eviction territory. The only thing that the eviction moratorium has really caused a negative impact on is all of the individuals that were in the eviction procedure prior to now have basically been put in a position where you just added several months to what already is, unfortunately, in Chicago, a process that can take 6 to 10 months. Now, I'm going to pause over here. This is a very important piece to understand. We've already discussed that different locations, different states, different counties, different countries all have different laws and rules and processes as to how quickly evictions can or cannot happen. And with the increase in place like Chicago, if it's already taking, as they said, 6 to 10 months for the eviction, now with the incoming sort of thing happening and the backlog of it, I do easily see this moving now to be, 10 to 15 month process before folks are being evicted, and this makes it incredibly challenging for the landlords. It buys a little bit more time for that tenant, but it makes it incredibly challenging for the landlords, and this is yet another reason of trying to find some sort of workable solution on the short end is probably a good idea. The property is now experiencing gap in income for a prolonged period of time, and when that ends up happening, a lot of deferred maintenance end up happening. Let's think about it, y'all. If you're not getting income, that means you can't pay your bills, right? Which means you can't get the staff and the team, which means you can't go in and fix some of the challenges that are happening, which means that those problems continue growing and expanding. And now it's bad for the landlord, it's bad for the tenant, it's bad for the neighbors, and it's bad for everybody around, including the bankers and the investors, the local government. So it's a really bad situation for everybody around. And so that's part of the problem and the challenge for folks to really kind of think through. So I think if you can come up with some sort of agreement and some sort of assistance and that kind of stuff and really work through these challenges, I think everybody needs to understand, look, if you're a tenant, you're not going to be able to live for free. I'm sorry, that's just not going to happen. And for the same thing is that if you're a landlord, you probably are not going to get the entire amount that is owed to you. You need to understand that that also is not going to happen, and both parties kind of need to come together and come up with some sort of workable plan and solution. Yes, it sucks. Yes, it's unfair, but what is the other option? You can go in, you can stick to your guns and kind of follow through, and eventually, both parties will end up losing at the end of the whole thing. There's an end to eviction moratorium. Once the moratorium is lifted, the eviction procedures will begin, and at that point, those types of offers, meaning workable solutions, may not be as readily available, and they won't be available at all, which means that everybody suffers. How many times are you going to be able to walk away from several $1,000s that you will owe or that you're being owed? So pay attention to that stuff and work through situations if you can right now. How does the billing pay for cleaning staff, repair staff, utilities, and so on, right? We just talked about that stuff. Even us as a management company, we're right here, in case you want to read along. If we don't collect rent, we don't get paid. If we don't get paid, we can't pay property manager, the receptionist, counting people, operation management people, and so forth. So what does that mean? Well, people are losing jobs, building, the neighbors, the community, all being impacted because now you have a property that isn't properly being serviced. When someone looks at it from a perspective, so here's kind of what he's saying, and it makes perfect sense when you change the story, right? I think it's important for us to think about it in a different light. I know there's a lot of people saying, but the home is somebody's, ability to live is a right. Well, yes, I agree, as is food, right? And so here the property manager is kind of putting it into a different type of sort of concept for you to think through. And I absolutely agree with it. I think it's a very valid consideration for all of us to think through. When someone looks at it from a perspective that housing is an absolute necessity, but it is a human right, do you walk into a restaurant and order food, eat, and walk out without paying? Do you walk into a pharmacy or grocery store, pick up things off the shelves that you absolutely need and are necessity in human rights, and walk out without paying? I think the answer to all of those things are no. And these are individuals that own buildings, and a lot of them are reliant on income to pay their bills. So he's basically saying that, look, we all agree. I think we all can agree, even on this show. I agree with it as well, that homes is a sort of human right, ability to live, ability to have food, ability to have water. All of it is, and at the same time, just as the same that we don't expect that we're going to get new pair of shoes and not have to pay for them, we're going to get a meal and not have to pay for them, that we're going to have medicine and medical care, and all the other things in life cost money. And as I always say, this is the reason why the channel is even being created, and it's called Money Matters, because money really does matter. We don't have to like it, we don't have to agree with it, but this is where we are right now, in a situation that we need money in life for everything. An ability to properly educate ourselves about money is a responsibility that every individual has. And while schools are not providing that, most schools, not all schools, some schools I think are starting to do that and have been doing that stuff. But overall, when we look at like education as a system, and not just in the United States, around the world, people are not being taught about money as much as they should be. And so this is what the mission of One Deal Away is, who is actually a sponsor of Money Matters shows, to provide some free education for everybody, those watching live and those watching on YouTube. And hey, if you're watching on YouTube, now is a perfect time to smash that like button, because I think I have dropped some brilliant gems your way. And I think that all of these conversations of how do we work through things deserve and have earned me a like. Maybe you disagree, but hey, one guy's opinion, as I always say. So it's one of those things that I think it's important for us to understand as to where we are and what's going on. And so that's the piece that I just really wanted to share with you today and right now, is that I believe that education is the number one thing that you should be focusing on, and financial education is something that can serve you not just today but for the rest of your life. And if you're saying yes, Nev, I absolutely agree, then hey, come on over to One Deal Away, onedealaway.com. You can go and check out. There's plenty of things that are absolutely free. As a matter of fact, if you are thinking about crypto 101 investing course is absolutely free, 100% free, that you get the moment that you sign up. You actually get it into your account. That way you get to check out something, get something without having to spend a penny. And then, of course, I do invite folks to come and check out the academy, because you get all of the courses out there when it comes to budgeting, investing, and everything else. And I think that that is very, very, very important for everybody to know. All right, now we're going to switch sides of the coin, right? We talked about the sort of potential doom and gloom and kind of what's going on and where things are heading. And, the good news is we'll all make through this, right? We'll all figure out how to get through this hot mess. It's probably going to be ugly and uncomfortable for now, but I think that we do have an ability. That's a beautiful part about us as humans, is that we do have an ability to get through many, many things, even when we don't know how to do that at the moment. Okay, so this article is actually much more on the positive side, and I agree with a lot of conversation here. So while we are focusing right now, and the mass media is focusing right now on really big challenges that are happening inside the real estate and all of the sort of negative components, I always keep saying that every bad side has its good side, every good side has its bad side, right? It's sort of same coin, two different sides of it, or same phone, just different camera, front or back. Depends which one you want to use. So, however, whatever analogy you would like to use, go for it. And this article over here is talking about how the greatest American housing boom has begun. And now you might be thinking, what in the world? We just talked about everything going, super horrible. And now you're talking about the great boom. What is wrong with you and this article? The U.S. housing is one of the best money-making opportunities today, has been for years, and will likely continue to be. I've never been more excited about the U.S. housing, and I agree. Right here, Nev saying, I agree. I am very, very positive and excited about the future of real estate. Residential housing market is worth $35 trillion right now, and it's absolutely booming. This past month, new home sales surged 55%, their biggest gain since 2005. The number of Americans looking to refinance their mortgage jumped 111%, and Quicken Loans just has its best month quarter in its 35-year history. Quicken funded a record of $120 billion in home loans in the first month of 2020, and it broke the record for its best lending year ever, with the 6 months still left to go in a year. Last month, the average home price spiked 6%. And building wars are fast becoming the rule and not the exception in the U.S. housing. More than half of the buyers who purchased bidding wars. I don't know if I said building, but bidding wars. And we talked about that here on this channel, right? If you'll remember, we talked about the facts that people will go in, they will put in an offer, and next thing you know, there's like 6 other offers and you're getting bid out. And it's not even that people are offering to buy below the market. They're actually buying at the market. But what we're seeing from both sides, the buyers are basically saying, we just can't buy. Everything we go and offer, we get bid out on. This is ridiculous. We can't keep up. So they're rethinking their strategies. The sellers are saying, this is crazy. I list the property for sale. Next thing you know, is I get like 20, 30, 40, 50 offers. 10% of that is all cash, and it's sometimes 10 to 20% above the asking price. Plus, they're saying they'll pay all the closing costs and stuff. Buy it as is. I don't have to do anything, and then we'll close in basically a week to 2 weeks. So as you can see, it's getting very, very competitive. Now, right over here, you can't really see it, and I don't want to share all of my information here with you because it's a very much public channel. But right here in the paper that I hold is just yesterday, I have actually received an offer for one of my properties from, I don't know, somebody random. I don't know who it is. Basically saying that, hey, we're going to buy this stuff. We're going to close in as little as 3 days. It's a full-on cash offer. We're agreeing to buy it, as is, where is, sign on the dotted line, send us out, and let's do this. So as you can see, this is starting to happen. Now, they did lowball the offer, so what I might do is just connect back and see if we can negotiate. Why not? Hey, whatever. I'll do it. I'll play along. So anyways, as you can see, these things are happening. And if you're a property owner, please know that you might start getting random letters just like I did from random individuals looking to buy. They will likely lowball your offer. So do look at it. If it is something within the potential market value or something that makes sense for you, it might be a great way to just say yes, or you can always just go in and renegotiate. I always tell people, you don't have to accept the first thing that just pops up. Renegotiate. Be a little bit picky. Don't settle for the first thing, for the easy thing, for the lowest fruit down, because you never know what's further up in the tree. So stretch out just a little bit. Don't be afraid to do that kind of stuff, y'all. All right. More than half of buyers who purchased a home in the past 3 months were forced into a bidding war. And on top of that, there is a chronic undersupply of homes in America. It would take less than 5 months to sell every existing home on the market. And actually, if you will recall, what about a week ago when we did the real estate special, we actually had realized that it's just a little bit over 4 months. So not like less than 5, like it's about 4 months supply. So all of the homes that exist currently in the market can be all sold in about 4 months. And we did talk about that the average within a healthy market, it's about 6 to 8 month period. So as you can see right here, we also have a chart that says U.S. monthly supply of houses. And as you can see, look at this thing. In 2009, we were well over 12 months. And then we have been steadily dropping. And, this is, I would say, on the healthier side of things. Then we hit a little bit on the higher end. And now we're right back down. But we're not as low as we were over here. Although, this is probably the lowest, and the market started recovering when we talk about real estate. Right around here is when we started to recover. So 2009, 2010, if you had purchased there, you had done a fabulous job, because from that point on, the market actually started to go up. Scared by the housing bust, home builders have been sitting on their hands for the past decade. An average of 1.5 million homes were built each year since 1959. Yet over the last decade, so if we look at right here from 2010 to 2020, the average, we just built 900,000 homes have been built per year. So, we were definitely on the short end of things. And we get a flood of home builders, home buyers rushing into the market. Now, I do want to pause over here and address a couple of things that are not being addressed here. So I am very bullish. I don't know that I am as blindsided as this individual who by the end actually ends up peddling that you should be buying home builder stocks. I don't know if you should. I don't know if you shouldn't. I tend to be more on the physical end of the market rather than on the highly manipulated paper market inside Wall Street casino. But that's just me. You do you. I do me. But here we are talking about kind of how all of this stuff works. I do want to point out one thing. We still have baby boomers. They're not gone. Now, they might be aging. They're definitely aging. We all are aging, right? Every day, you're at least 1 day older. And sometimes, if it's a really stressful day, who knows? You might have aged 5 days or almost a year in that 1 day. Excuse me. I forgot to bring my water today. So, but they still own homes. A lot of them own homes, and those are going to be going on the market as more and more millennials start going into buying stuff. So I do want to acknowledge that there is that conundrum as well happening. The challenge right now, or at least it was, is that where many of the boomers own homes, millennials are not interested in buying. However, because of coronavirus, virus thing happen, right? The coronavirus, many people are exiting the sort of popular, used to be popular areas, and are now going into more rural areas, which is where a lot of boomers are owning property. So, hey, boomer, if you do own that home, and if you're thinking, at some point I might need to sell and move on somewhere else, now's the time. Now is the time, y'all. This is the time where you want to buy, okay? And of course, you can always rent, and hey, as the market shifts, you can always get back in. But this is the seller's market. So if you're looking to sell, even if you're like, I don't know if I want to sell now, but I definitely know I want to sell in the upcoming, 1 to 3 years. This is probably a bit better time to sell. Again, not a financial advice. You do what makes sense for you. It's just the way that I'm sort of thinking about it. Or you can come up with a different case scenario. But we will potentially see that some of those properties, not all, but some of those properties, millennials will likely want to snatch up and then update and upgrade. I know that from a lot of my students and clients, they are starting to go out there a bit more rural, buying homes that have a good potential as they're getting ready to either start their families or expand their families on the younger side. I really am talking actually about, some are Gen X, a lot of them are millennials, and I really am talking about them because they're starting to get into the market, those that actually have businesses and still good jobs, so they're looking for ways to expand and go more rural. So again, great way for the boomers who have been maybe sitting in too big of a house. Now is the time to pass on the torch to the younger generations. But just my opinion. Millennials are the biggest generation in the U.S. history, bigger than even baby boomers. They aren't kids anymore, and the average millennial turns 32 this year. And guess what? The median age of the first-time home buyer in the U.S. is 31 years of age. A whole generation of home buyers will soon flood the market at the time when there is a massive shortage in homes in America. Supply is tight, record number of buyers, which means demand is going up. Y'all do the math, right? Do the math. Now, what I do want to pause is this is very long term. This kind of thinking is very, very long term. And very long term, I am incredibly bullish with the real estate market. What I do see in the shorter term, I'm not saying next month, y'all. When I talk about long term and short term in real estate, I really am talking short term. I am talking about, 12 to 24 months plus minus, right? And a long term is going to be, 3 to 5 to 10 years from now. So that's kind of where my range is. In the long term, it's probably about closer to the 10 years than anything else. So just something for you to kind of keep in mind. What are we talking about here when we're talking about some of these like long versus short term? So right now where we are, with all of the forbearances and evictions and that kind of stuff, depending on where we are, I still do think and expect that we will see a potential resurgence of the homes hitting the markets, which is going to potentially bring down the prices, scare everybody off, and that is the great time, scary but great time for folks to actually jump in. After that, when that kind of calms down, everybody else gets more comfortable. That's when you're going to start seeing the prices start to go up and the competition start to go up, and those that are investing intelligently are going to be able to pick up way more properties. Those that are not are going to be really, really struggling. And so we'll see kind of how the whole thing works out. Again, crystal ball broke. I don't know where we're going, but this is just how I think about the whole thing. Builders have been very cautious over the past decade, but now they're finally ramping up. Number of building permits granted shot up to their highest level since March 2007, and housing starts surged 17% in June as states began reopening. The shortage of available homes is allowing home builders to charge a premium. And here is sort of a stock of one of the things of one of the builders. And like I said, he then goes into pedal for the why you should go into the stocks. I don't know that I agree with it, but I do want to point out some things, right? So right now we have shortage of homes, increase of the buyers. That is going to shift as the economic status and the changes are not being fixed, are not being changed, and if the additional income, the extension, those kinds of things don't start coming in, we are going to experience over the next, I would say, 6 to 24 months, right? Let's keep it at that, maybe a little bit longer. A decrease in homes, an increase in supply. Now, the builders, it's so funny. Builders always jump in at the worst possible time. Okay? They jump in at the peak. So now we're going to see a supply from people that are forced to sell. We're going to see a supply from folks that are being foreclosed upon. We're going to see a supply now increase from the builders. And of course, the buyers are going to be scared out of their wits because as things start crashing, they're going to be petrified of jumping in, potentially, right? And so that's the part where I'm saying we're going to see, that gives me even bigger sort of picture that prices are definitely going to drop. And then after that happens, when things start calming down, smart folks kind of jump in at the worst time, right? You want to jump in at the worst time, as they say, the scariest time. Not the worst to invest, but the scariest to invest, right? When things are down, when it's doom and gloom, that's when you want to go in. And then the tide is going to rise all boats. And when you come in at the bottom, it rises you right back on up. Now, I did talk about, me being bullish on the real estate and me being bullish on financing that stuff. And I said about you want to have a fixed term rate for 30 years. Heck, if they had 50 years, I'd buy the 50 years. If they had 100, I'd take 100, but they don't. They only offer a 30-year mortgage here. So, I will take the 30 as the longest one. So you always want to go with the longest one. And again, I've done the video as to why. But now I'm going to talk about why I am also saying that, hey, not only am I excited about the real estate market and where it's going and kind of the potential that there's going to be some amazing deals coming our way and ability for all of that stuff to rise on up, but I am also bullish on why you should have mortgage and not paying it off, unlike many other people. I know that's not popular. I know that it's popular right now to say pay off that, pay off that, pay off that, pay off that. And yes, the consumer debt should be paid off, but there is a productive debt that actually can boost you up. And now with this next piece is that I want to share with you. Remember, I want to say just yesterday, we talked about the Jay Powell, how he's talking about we are reevaluating stuff. We want to push in. We want to get inflation to 2 or potentially 4% and so on. Remember the conversation, right? And if you didn't watch it, go ahead and watch it on YouTube. It's right there under the Money Matters. So it's in the channel as well. So you'll be able to see it and catch up on the whole thing. Or you can just simply use your internet searching skills and you'll be able to find it. Now, the inflation we also talked about has ticked up to about 1%. We've also done a entire education video of why inflation is excellent for those that actually have properties that are being financed. And I believe I have titled it a magic trick. So you want to watch the magic trick video for sure to understand how it all works. And if you will remember, for those of you that didn't, I used a little bit of water, a little bit of magic, and showed you how I was able to make debt disappear and increase my profitability in real estate property. This is an amazing, amazing time where we are right now. Everybody is petrified of inflation. Meanwhile, a guy like me, I'm excited about it. I know that sounds horrible. Look, I want to put one thing out there. I don't wish evil on anybody. I don't wish harm on anybody. I don't wish that anybody gets hurt. And it breaks my heart that I know that many people are being hurt and are going to be hurt. But I also can't control any of those things. So why not position myself and talk about it on the channel for free to allow you and help you position yourself as well to benefit? Because if we could have as many people as possible benefit from what's about to happen, then that's a good thing, right? Then I have done my job of helping as many people as possible. And that's the only reason why Money Matters and One Deal Away exist, is to help people help themselves when it comes to money. So here's the thing. Inflation kind of comes in. It eats at the debt. Debt gets eaten by the inflation, which is exciting. So when you have house that has debts, what does inflation do? Well, inflation actually devalues our money, right? Our fiat dollars. Well, it also, and our dollars are debt. So it also devalues debt. Yes? Are you following? What else does it do? Well, all of this money printing, where is it going? It's going into the assets. What assets? Well, predominantly going into the stocks, real estate, gold, and crypto. What are we talking about on these channels? Well, we talk about real estate, gold, crypto, and I do cover some stocks, but as you have noticed, I'm not a huge fan. Not because I don't believe in stocks, but because of where we are right now. It's just valuations don't make sense, and I don't like the fact that you have zero control and that there's so much meddling behind and so much bad actors in the space. That's all. But you still can, utilize that concept. So let's think about the real estate, because that's what today's episode is all about. So you have inflation comes up. It eats at the debt, meaning your mortgage. It also raises the price or the value of that home. Well, I don't know about value, but the price, market price of that home, right? So now you're getting one movement that actually does two different things. It eliminates your debt and it increases the value of the property, or the market value or the market price of the property. That's a win-win scenario if you really think about it. Now, here's the thing to also understand. We've been talking about how the inflation is about 1% right now, and how we actually wanting to get it up to 2 to 4%. You might have heard of the thing called shadowstats.com. Oftentimes I talk about it. Oftentimes many other people talk about it. And here I have actually pulled up a chart of the consumer inflation, official versus shadow stats. And this is, they're using 1990 based alternate. So what the government does is they actually changed how CPI is being calculated. They do substitutions, they do all kinds of different things. You're absolutely welcome, and I encourage you to go out there and read more about it, of how all of that stuff works and how it's being created. But all I want to do over here is talk to you about kind of how things are and running. So the red line is the official CPI. So this is the official consumer price index, or the way we measure inflation. And as you will see, we were at about 0 not that long ago, and we just ticked up to a little bit, like maybe approaching 1-ish, right? Not quite a 1, but roughly there, okay? And you can kind of see where it's been happening, where we are. And then the blue one is following the same formula, because CPI calculation is basically a formula. And they follow the same formula that we use, that the government used to calculate inflation, to calculate consumer price index back in 1990s. And if we were to follow that, our inflation right now is actually just under 4%, right? So it's not approaching 1, it's actually approaching 4% if we were to use the same calculation. And like I said, a lot of times they will use different ideas and formulas. One of it is going to be substitution, for example. So what is substitution? Well, they basically go in and say, well, if the price of beef goes from, $4 a pound to $6 a pound, the consumer will switch to chicken, and the chicken went from $3 a pound to $5 a pound. So the consumer basket, the consumer price index, went from $4 to $5. Do you see what I'm talking about? Right? So that's one of the ways that they do. There's many other ways, and I highly encourage you to go out and read and research about how and why. Fair? All right. So there you go. That's kind of how it's being based. Now, they also have created a chart that said, well, wait a minute, the consumer price index has shifted so much from 1980s. We have done so much meddling that if we were to use the 1980 based component, and as you can see that it was happening together, and then right around mid 80s they decided to start shifting and moving things around because inflation was so high and they were afraid that people are going to, like, combust. So they have ended up changing the stuff. And so what they did is basically then started to shift, and you will see the red line is sort of the CPI that we are being told. And if you watch Mike Maloney, you will notice that he will also call it CPI as opposed to CPI, and I do think it's kind of funny that he calls it that. But so that's where you will see. So you will see that where that same thing over here is just zoomed out. And if you were to follow the 1980s methodology, we are actually this is, if this is 5, this is 10, so we're what, about 7.5, maybe 8% inflation. Okay, so now, if keeping this in mind, if we were to jump now from this 0 to 1 to about 4%, as they're saying that they would absolutely welcome to catch up, that means that the real inflation would likely hit between 10 and 15% as calculated in the 1980s basis, or it would probably go up to about 8 to 10%. So real inflation, if and when we hit that between 2 and 4%, is probably going to be between in the old way, or the real inflation, not the CPI version of the whole thing. The real inflation would then be between 8 and 12% roughly. This is incredibly exciting for me, and here is why. Because if you have property and that property is mortgaged and inflation comes in, that means that it's going to eat into my debts. It's going to increase the value of my property, which means I end up not just preserving my wealth, but growing it. This is the reason why I am incredibly passionate and bullish on real estate. But you gotta be smart if you invest in real estate. You gotta invest in this guy over here first, rather than just buying a house. One of the easiest and freest ways is to stay tuned in with Money Matters channel, whether live on onedealaway.com or on YouTube. And if you are on YouTube, smash that like button, because I think I have earned the like right about now. Do subscribe, do hit the bell button, make sure you come back. And of course, if you want to get more in depth about strategies, about ways not just to benefit today, but position yourself throughout the strategy and get all the coaching and all the other stuff as we kind of continue evolving, onedealaway.com. You definitely want to jump into the academy where we teach all of those things. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I hope you are now just as excited about real estate as I am, and that you're bullish long-term on that inflation thing that everybody's petrified about. But yet, I am excited. I say, bring it on. I will see you tomorrow. Until then, stay forever money blessed. And do remember, you are only one deal away.